All right, Nick, let's talk about the Florida Gators. As we love to talk about, the Gators have a lot of great things going for them, especially on the offensive side of the ball. New quarterback's going to be starting the whole season this year. We think that's going to be really exciting, but that's not what we're here to talk about. The defense side of the ball, one player in particular, is starting to look very intriguing. I think Gators fans are going to love this because it's going to give them a lot of help where they were the worst last year. We'll dive into all of that in just 1 second, but first, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, one player in particular on the defensive side of things is looking really good, and that's going to be great because we all know that this offense is going to be much, much improved with DJ Lagway starting the full season this year. So let's jump on into the article and see what is going good on the defensive side of things. This is from over on SI.com. And it's talking about defensive lineman Joseph Mbatchou. This first part is from defensive coordinator Ron Roberts. Says, despite being a true freshman, Gators defensive lineman Joseph Mbatchou could contribute early in 2025 due to his strong offseason. There's several guys talking about the defensive line group here from Ron Roberts, Jamari Lyons, Michael Bioriu. I probably butchered that. I apologize. And we got a freshman coming in there that takes a spot in Mbatchou. That's important to hear. Defensive coordinator Ron Roberts said at the beginning of the team's fall camp on who could replace former Gator defensive lineman Cam Jackson. He said, and then going on, Billy Napier talking about this squad says, I think they did a really good job of teaching him the basics and I think his fundamentals. It's impressive to me after 1 year not going to be a mid-year player. The guy just showed up late May, early June. Head coach Billy Napier said of him, talking about Mbatchou, he's a very impressive young man. He's definitely got a bright future, and our goal is to help him get better every day. Maybe there's an opportunity for him to contribute at some point. So already, not only is Mbatchou a guy who hasn't played much football because he came to America, started playing football late in his career. This guy is already looking like a contributor on the defensive line, potentially by two separate coaches, and his teammates are saying good stuff about him as well. In addition to his coaches, Mbatchou has been impressing his fellow defensive linemen on the roster. That man right there, that's different. Lyon said, former or fellow defensive lineman for the Gators. He don't even understand his strength right now because he's still a puppy. Interesting to put it that way, but talking about Mbatchou, the guy is powerful. He knows, everyone knows what he is capable of. This is a guy that I think can really help out this Florida defensive line, which leads me to our next slide here, talking about where Florida was in the SEC defensively, because we're all talking about, what Florida wants to do. They want to be national football championship contenders, college football playoff contenders. This is a team that wants to come out here and just be a dominant force. And when you're 12th in the SEC in defense, that ain't going to happen. You've got to get better. This is a team that's 60th in all of college football defensively. But when you look in the ranks of the SEC, you got to be in the top five, top six teams if you want to be a contender. We see a lot of these teams fall out of there. They're not contenders out there. Guys just on the outside, not going to cut it. So this is important for Florida. And I think a guy like Mbatchou can really help, because if we look at my final slide here from Perplexity AI, Nick's favorite AI, our favorite AI here, we can see only one defensive tackle left in the draft, and that was Cam Jackson going to the Carolina Panthers here. There's two important starters across the defensive line that are returning this year, then another transfer as well. I think if Mbatchou can come in here and do some good work as a freshman, it will help build this defense up and really, catapult them to the next level. Obviously, we think if the offense is better, the defense is going to have a little bit better, grades as well. They're not going to be stuck on the field as much. It's not going to be as bad play. So I think that overall, this team is looking to have a defensive overhaul. There's a lot of other good things they've done this season. You can check out our other videos to see what we talked about in that. But overall, this defense for the Gators, I think, is rising. And I think a guy like Joseph Mbatchou is a big part of why they're going to be much, much improved this season. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Gators fans, in the comment section below, we're talking about defensive linemen. Football's almost here. We're right at the edge, but not quite. So we can ask a couple more, camp style questions. Who's your favorite Gators defensive lineman of all time? There's a lot of great ones. I think recently they have a lot of guys pop out that were really good as well. But let us know in the comment section below, who's your favorite Gators defensive lineman of all time in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on everything Mbatchou here?
Well, I think it's important to go back to you brought up the fact Florida Gators defensively, based on the analytics per PFF, not good, not where you want to be. Here's the other thing, though. It's not just the analytics. It's not just the deep dive player grades and performance where they weren't good. It was also in the raw production. So in terms of stopping the run, they were the third worst in the SEC last year, surrendering on average 149.5 yards a game. That's per ESPN. To give you some teams with better run defenses, how about Vanderbilt had a better run defense than they did? How about the terribly awful Auburn Tigers last year had a significantly better run defense than the Florida Gators did? They ain't going to cut it, right? Lagway's a phenomenal quarterback. He's an outstanding talent. Going into year two, we're expecting big things, wide receivers, breakout stars emerging on the offensive side of the ball. But if you can't stop the run, and your data showed it there, a lot of the winning teams, they stop the run, you won't win. That's a fact, right? That's one of those things about football. We know it's about quarterback play these days, but when push comes to shove in these big moments, especially in the SEC, you have got to stop the run. If you look at the top teams in the SEC, and according to your graph, the vast majority of them are very, very good at stopping the run. The ones that actually win games that struggle at stopping the run, it's because they're supremely good everywhere else, and usually even that's only sort of a short-term blip. Consistent success, and Florida has proven this in the past. You look at, of course, the great Urban Meyer years. Even when Will Muschamp had his best years, what were they great at? Stopping the run, getting teams to 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, and allow their pass rushers and defensive backs to tee off, right? You have got to stop the run. You have to make it hard for the opposition. I know in today's college football world, everyone's looking at the quarterback, and rightly so, right? It's becoming more and more important. But the other thing to consider is that because of the transfer portal, NILs, there's a lot of volatility at the quarterback, a lot of volatility at wide receiver positions, coordinators, quarterback coaches. What's going to happen, at least in the early part of seasons, in my opinion, teams are going to lean on the running game a little bit more while they figure out the timing at the quarterback and wide receiver and play caller situation. What does that mean early on for Florida? You got to stop the run, right? I think Lagway's supremely talented and he's going to have an awesome year. I think he's an under the radar Heisman contender, but none of that matters if you finish third worst in the SEC. If you get a buck 50 on the ground per game, it won't matter. And that's the good news, or that's the bad news for Florida. The good news is that we've got young studs like Mbatchou coming into the fold. This is a kid who grew up in Cameroon, was born in Cameroon of all places, coming to the Florida Gators, just a raw, unbridled talent, impressing everyone. I love these kind of stories because sometimes having sort of an outsider come in, it's a different approach. So many people, I think, if you, especially if you're born, raised, and grew up in sort of a football environment, a crazy football environment, you're just taught to play and behave and act a certain way. Sometimes an outsider can come in and shake things up and allow defensive linemen or coaches to see things a little differently, get a little creative with approaches. I think that's potentially what could happen here. But I think overall, as a defense, and certainly up front defensively, Florida's going to have to rely on whoever's making the most plays. It's going to be a meritocracy up front because last season, the merit wasn't very good. Again, I'll say this one more time, giving up 149.5 yards per game on the ground. I mean, that is a scary bad number for a team looking to contend at the top of the SEC. And like you mentioned, get back into the college football playoff, maybe even contend for a national championship. Now, I still think they're a year away from national championship contention, but when you have quarterback, right, and when you got a lot of young playmakers, and I think a lot of opportunities in the SEC, there's no reason to think Florida can't, sneak into the postseason and be one of those latter half of those 12 guys and maybe win a playoff game or two, right? As they look to build to that national championship, national title run in the future. But I'm going to say this again, you got to stop the run, right? Early in the season, as teams get used to new quarterbacks, new receivers because of NIL transfer stuff, teams are going to lean on the run. And towards the end of the season, when the weather gets bad, certainly if you have to go in these bowl games, playoff game kind of atmospheres, you got to stop the run. It's one of those things. It's a truism that will be in football. It's been in football since the 1800s, since the first football game between Princeton and Rutgers in 1863. It's true in 2025. If you don't stop the run, it's very hard to win. You can overcome some blemishes. If you're not the best receiving team, you can overcome with great quarterback play and great protection. If you're not the best coverage team, you can overcome it with pass rush and vice versa. If you're not the best pass rush team, you can overcome it with coverage. But if you can't stop the run, it makes life harder for everybody, right? You get to 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3 on defense. What do you call, right? You're afraid of big plays. You're afraid of them running the ball again for a first down. You got to watch out for the short, though. Play action, bootleg. Your defense gets tired. You get demoralized. You can't stop the run. Your offense with your great young quarterback stays on the sidelines, ball control. All of that compounds on itself, right? It's hard to win on the road if you can't run the football, right? You get, or it's hard to stop teams from beating you when they're on the road. Excuse me. It's harder to defend your home turf if you can't stop the run because teams want to run when they're on the road. All of that kind of compounds and makes your life a lot harder. And it made Florida's life a lot harder last season. I'm excited to see some young guys step up. I'm going to reserve a little bit of judgment to see what happens until the games actually start. But it's definitely a great sign that they've got some young guys, especially this young freshman in particular, that's doing some good things. Because if that can carry over to the regular season, that's a great sign for Florida. Because they don't have to become like champions at stopping the run. They don't have to, go from worst to first. They have to just get back to baseline competency. If they do that, I think they'll be in a really good shot to make some noise in the SEC.
Yeah, Nick, and I think the two things you brought up, one is really important, is you talk about what this team is doing and how they were deficient in some categories. But I think good defensive line play, it can cover up a lot of issues. If they can be good at the point of attack, stopping the run, if these guys can be better at rushing the passer, it will help, boost the coverage grades. It will help boost everything as far as what this defense does. So this is going to be really, really crucially important here. And I think there's a lot of good to come with this as well. Florida brought in a lot of high level DB recruits. They brought in a lot of high level D line recruits this year. Heck, you look at who they've brought in so far, 12 guys this year, defensive side of the ball, talking about recruits in the 2025 class. A lot of them 4-star plus recruits, really high guys rated in the 90s in the 4 stars. So a lot of good quality recruits on the defensive side of the ball, and Mbatchou included. So I think this team going in the right direction. I think we're going to see a lot of great defensive play this year. And one other thing I like about Mbatchou is something we talk about a lot is this is a guy young in his football career. He still has so much left to learn. Sometimes you can see like, and this is probably a poor example, but I'm going to use it nonetheless. A guy like Arch Manning, he comes in, he's ultra polished. He's been football his entire life. He's had the best coaches, the best everything. And Mbatchou has not had that whatsoever. So this guy is like his teammate said, he doesn't even know how strong he is. He doesn't know how good he is yet because he's in the infancy of his football career. This is a guy that is just going to get better and get better. And I think he's going to skyrocket up there once he picks up some key things here and there. This guy is going to be a star for the Gators, and I think early on in his career, that's a good place to get him. You're able to flip him from Texas, bring him to Florida. Now you're seeing that it was a good move. This guy early on in his career is impressing. I think he's going to be a star one day on this Florida defensive line.